Hello, dear friends. What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our thoughts of today will build our life tomorrow. Opinion piece. The power of egregor, belief systems, thought forms, collective mind, invisible friends, the fifth element, morphogenetic field, the power of thought, collective and conscious, the path of Taoist Simplicity, the guardian of the threshold. Everyone talks about the month of October. Let's start. All belief systems would be egregors, that is, artificially created collective thought forms that take on a life on their own, and that can sometimes become masters that attack their own creators. That is why Goya wrote that the dream of reason produces monsters. That is why Lao Tzu believed that the best government is the one that does not exist, because the more you try to fix the world, the more it breaks down. Thank you, Alan Watts. Lao Tzu's path of simplicity would be the way of not creating egregors. It consists of living in the present with detachment, spontaneity, humility, and simplicity in thought and action. Non-action or wu-wei doesn't mean inactivity, but rather action with naturalness, simplicity, and spontaneity. That is, flowing with the natural rhythm of themes and acting effortlessly. It is making decisions and acting intuitively, instead of forcing situations, and above all, the three treasures: compassion, frugality, and humility. The Tao would be the foundation and origin of the beings of the universe. The only constant in the universe is change, the constant flux from being to non-being and back again. If we accept this fact, the supreme harmony of the immortals is achieved. People who lived in harmony with nature were said to be immortal. That is why the fundamental objective of the Taoists was to achieve immortality through external and internal alchemy, to live in harmony with the Tao, which is the supreme reality of all things. He who follows the Tao becomes one with the Tao. Masters. Human beings create egregors and feed them to keep them alive, but sometimes egregors rule. Wizards who create an egregor end up being its slave. Dr. Frankenstein failed to control his monster, which ruined his life. Same as Mr. Hyde with Dr. Jekyll. Rabbi Loewe of Prague failed to control the golem, which made disasters. The most powerful of all would be the Jewish egregor. His only rival would be the Catholic egregor, but it cannot compare to it. The Christian egregor deprived almost all the egregors on the planet of his food, but he did not fully succeed. Then its rival appeared, the Masonic egregor, eager for revenge. An egregor charged with colossal energy could discharge it in the form of lightning and strike down its own treacherous, high initiates who abandon it. This would explain the lightning strike over the Vatican after the resignation of Benedict XVI, but it is only a hypothesis. Ransomware, a type of malicious malware used to encrypt a victim's files and computer systems, is also called egregor. Once the files are encrypted, it demands a ransom in the form of cryptocurrency in exchange for providing the decryption key needed to unlock the files and restore access to the system. Definition. The egregor is a metaphysical concept that comes to present a form of thought or collective mind, that is, an autonomous psychic entity capable of influencing the thoughts of a group of people. It refers to a collective entity or energy that arises from the sum of thoughts, emotions, and beliefs of a group of people who share a common ideology. The word egregor comes from the Greek egregoroi, which means watch, and egregor is considered to be a psychic entity that takes on a life on its own and can influence the people who are part of the group that fits it. In certain esoteric practices, the egregor can be deliberately created to strengthen the union and collective power of a group. This entity can influence the thoughts, emotions, and actions of its members, being able to generate both positive and negative changes depending on the purpose of the group that fits it. Tulpa. Tulpa is a concept for Buddhist mysticism, a being or object created by mental or spiritual powers. The Western tradition uses the term to refer to the belief in a type of imaginary friend with their own will, thought, and opinion, which implies a certain autonomy. It looks like the invisible friend that some children create with their imagination. In Western culture, it is called tulpa to a form of thought with autonomy and own will. It can take the form of an animal, an object, a human being, or a fantastic being, etc. A thought form is a particular way in which people structure, process, and organize information in their minds. They are cognitive patterns that influence how we understand the world, make decisions, and solve problems. References. Tulpas are believed to be created through strong belief and visualization. In the 2001 film The Day the World Ended, the boy protagonist, whose name was Ben Miller, creates a monster with his mind, with the appearance of an alien similar to the one he observed in an ancient black and white horror movie. He created it without much effort, or inadvertently, apparently. There is a belief that once the tulpas began to exist on their own, they would form a residual soul and would cease to be just a spiritual projection or an imaginary entity, and they would no longer be so easy to control or eliminate by presenting a conscience by his own. Alexandra David Neal claimed to have observed such practices in Tibet during the 20th century. She described the tulpas as magical formations generated by a powerful concentration of thought. Alexandra believed that tulpas could develop their own mind and thought. Once a tulpa is endowed with enough energy to be able to function as a real being, it tends to free itself from its creator's control. Collective mind. The collective mind refers to the idea that a group of individuals, rather than operating independently, can collaborate and share information in such a way that their knowledge, ideas, and decisions are combined into a collective entity or system of thought. A morphogenetic field is a kind of invisible field of matrix of information that influences the development of form of organisms and systems in nature. These fields would be responsible for shaping the characteristics and behavior patterns of the individuals of a species. The collective unconscious is considered a repository of shared experiences and knowledge throughout human history. It contains archetypes which would be symbolic and universal representations of fundamental concepts such as the hero, the mother, the old man, etc. These archetypes are manifested in myths, religions, folk tales, and in aesthetic and cultural creation. The guardian of the threshold. Have no doubt that all of us who undertake the ascent face all kinds of enormous obstacles. The ascent to Mount Carmel by St. John of the Cross deals with the purification of the soul from worldly imperfection and attachments, from the spiritual darkness that the soul can experience in its search, and from the transforming union with divinity. The guardian of the threshold is a threatening figure described by several esoteric teachers, who comes to meet us in many ways. He manifests himself as soon as the student of the spirit ascends on the path of higher wealth of knowledge, according to Rudolf Steiner. The initiate must cross that threshold to reach enlightenment. This is why the ancient Stoics advised moderation and sought an imperturbable serenity. It is a symbol that represents the internal obstacles and limitations that a living human being must face and overcome in their search for personal and spiritual growth. It represents a psychological or a spiritual barrier that must be overcome on the path to enlightenment. Overcoming the guardian of the threshold symbolizes the process of freeing yourself from these limitations and entering a state of higher consciousness and the spiritual expansion. The fifth element. The fifth element is a transcendental concept beyond the four classical elements of ancient Greek cosmology: earth, water, air, and fire. It can represent the spiritual dimension, primordial energy consciousness, or the transcendental connection between material elements and the spiritual world. In ancient Greek philosophy, the fifth element was called ether or quintessence, a heavily immutable and spiritual element that would exist beyond the terrestrial elements. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the fifth element is called akasha. It refers to space or cosmic ether, and is considered the foundation from which the other elements emerge. In alchemy, the fifth element can refer to a form of primordial energy or the life force that underlies all things. It represents the spiritual dimension of consciousness, a transcendental force that unites the other four material elements. For a long time, it was considered that the states of matter were three: solid, liquid, and gaseous. Then a fifth state called Bose-Einstein condensate was discovered, which is the material state of superconductors. It refers to the condensation of pairs of particles at extremely low temperatures, allowing for superconductivity and its benefits. There may be more states and levels of matter than science has no idea about. Ancient Hindu literature also says the matter is composed of anu or atoms, and that there are subtle energies of the human energy field called paramanu, which means beyond the atom. Excuse me. Reset news. Jared Rand conference call. The old system would be rapidly deteriorating. RVB wouldn't happen until enough bad guys are depowered. Whatever the dark controllers or their puppets say, just reverse it completely, and that is the truth. Jared wants the white hats to turn on EBS and tell the truth and get on with it. Ramaswamy asks to meet with the white hats according to Michael Baxter. Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy sent an email to General Eric Smith requesting an audience with the White Hat Council. After reading the email, General Smith feels that Ramaswamy's background is questionable, so he has not sent a response. Turning point. We are waiting for the breakthrough in the awakening of the masses, or the collapse of the monetary system. Otherwise, we would have been released much sooner. The gold-backed BRICS currency threatens to destroy the foundation of fiat currency. The government of the Netherlands, which was trying to enforce control over the food grown, has resigned. The people have protested and have forced this action. Detmar believes that GESRA would be activated in the first quarter of 2024. There would be great changes across the planet by the end of the first quarter of 2024. We would only have about 2 months of negative influence. The month of October would mark the beginning of a series of world events according to Damian Galeron. In his opinion, the most critical moment would be the period between October 2023 and March 2024, and doesn't exclude the beginning of a greater tribulation than the one that began a few years ago, nor the arrival of the great warning that a public announcement that would stop a great war, and that, in my opinion, could be the great solar flash. Marian Messages speaks precisely on Friday, October 13th, 2023, as a critical date. Precisely on this day, the International Day for the Reduction of Natural Disasters is celebrated. Buffner said, "The edges become scaly and the inflows are varied. The news is exaggerated, and you can see this when you scan any number of entries. All this goes to say that nobody knows the day or the hour. No one knows who to trust, and no one can know. All roads to Rome are blocked until further notice. We are sitting with the best of top minds." News. Wheat rises up to 3.5% due to the war in the Black Sea. The negative price of electricity is already spreading across half of Europe. In several European countries, electricity is paid negatively at various hours of the day. Argentina imports $600 million in banknotes before the elections. UK government and businesses are looking to unleash facial recognition technologies across the urban landscape. Green hypocrisy. 60 million trees felled for wind farms in Scotland. Radioactive fish near Fukushima renew concern about nuclear wastewater dumping in the ocean. Elon Musk promises to cover the legal cost of those mistreated by employers for their activity on Twitter. Zuckerberg scoffs at Elon Musk's proposal to broadcast their debate on the X network. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.